Our final panelist is going to be Josh Hamilton, who is really an innovator in terms of what he's doing now, and I think you're going to really enjoy listening to him. As I think most of you know, there are 18 states around the country that pay us to run trains, Michigan being one of them. And many of the states are, in tight budget situations and have, asked us to look at staffing reductions at stations, which is consistent with things that have happened elsewhere in the Amtrak system as ticketing has really changed and all seems to be done in the palm of your hand now. And so Michigan has looked at alternatives to staffing at stations, and specifically in Lansing has looked at the creation of a volunteer association to man to staff our station in Lansing. We're very interested in this idea. It's very intriguing. Communities that do stations well, cities and towns that do stations well, really see the station as a gateway. And certainly in Lansing, they've done a wonderful job there with their new multimodal center. Some of you probably remember the old station in Lansing, which was a double-wide trailer, it just did not present a good front door either for the city of Lansing or for Amtrak, especially given the volume of passengers there. The community has taken great pride in their new facility and has worked to come up with a station host program led by Josh. I think that this is a trend that we'll see nationwide, and I think Josh could be a great advocate, not only for the city of Lansing, but for this kind of program nationally. And so I'm going to turn it over to Josh and tell us a little bit about your program and what you think works and what doesn't work, and what you think the chances are for this to happen elsewhere.
Thank you so much, Ray. Definitely intimidating to go after Larry and Bob. I don't even work for Amtrak or MDOT or anything like that. I have no paid labor in this game, but I've always been interested in all kinds of public transportation in general. And one of the things that I experienced in East Lansing, as Ray said, the double wide trailer that we formerly had, that was the station, being a rider of Amtrak from that station. I was there as a rider when the station agent was removed. And one of the things that we noticed in my work on Michigan Association of Railroad Passengers, kind of representing East Lansing to Port Huron, we noticed that East Lansing is a big and busy station, and there was a lot of difficulty for customers, particularly first-time riders, with just not knowing what to do. I mean, if it was an unmanned station, there isn't a lot of signage. It was basically the train would pull in, and folks have to kind of figure out where to go. And again, if you're a first-time rider, not only is that difficult, but it's also, I think, stressful, and it creates a little bit of a negative first ride. So what happened is we proposed this idea, myself and then Steve Vagnozzi, who's another board member of the Michigan Association of Railroad Passengers. We said, it'd be awesome to have volunteers here, like we've seen in some very limited stations around the country. And so what we decided to do is basically reach out to a number of partners. I mean, if there's any miracle in this program, it's to get, the 7 or 8 municipalities and companies in the same room at the same time, talking to each other and getting along. I mean, that's probably a miracle in itself. So we reached out to Amtrak, to MDOT, to the Michigan State University. We reached out to CATA, who actually owns and manages the multimodal gateway where the Amtrak station is. We also included the other members from Michigan Association of Railroad Passengers, all of those people in a room, and we just threw out the idea, what if we had a volunteer program? What might that look like? And a number of partners were very helpful in suggesting, here's what's worked in other places. And so we decided that we would put together a proposal. That proposal was approved by CATA and by Amtrak and by MDOT, kind of the 3 major partners in this project. And we decided to take that and go public with it. I mean, this was a scary moment when we sent the press release off to the news agencies in the area, just really not knowing, is there anybody in East Lansing or Lansing area that cares about trains enough to show up on a Saturday morning at 7:45, put on a big blue vest, and help customers, find their way to the train. A number of news agencies covered the event live, and we had a really surprisingly good turnout. We had probably 30 to 35 people come in person, filling out applications, putting their name down as interested, asking questions. And what the first thing that really stood out to me from this program, and it's something that Derek James, particularly from Amtrak, had mentioned that he thought might happen, is it's not just going to be people who like trains. It's people who are passionate about the community. It's people who are already engaged within the community who see this as more than a train station. It's really a gateway into the community. And if you know anything about the East Lansing station, the ridership is really high, considering there's only one train a day. I mean, it's not unusual on a Friday to board 200 passengers or 300 passengers on a busy day. So it's a busy station. The university certainly contributes to that. It's also a really good distance from Chicago, so folks are able to commute for business work or whatnot to Chicago. So it's a busy station. So there was just a lot of community investment. And again, the people that we had that applied, they surprised me and I think all of us in that probably only 20% of them were, true rail enthusiasts, people who love trains. The rest of them were community advocates who said, this is important. This is how we welcome people to our community. This is an important connection to bigger and, cooler places like Chicago and the rest of the Amtrak system as well. So some of the benefits that we've seen initially with the program, even before we started it, our goals were having community investment in the station and having a localized experience. So one of the things that can happen is, all the stations can sort of feel the same, look the same. If you've ever arrived to East Lansing Station, it's sort of in a parking lot, and when you look out, you don't see anything iconic East Lansing. I mean, there's like a subway across the road. It really doesn't look necessarily like you're in East Lansing. So we wanted to use community members to make it feel like you're in East Lansing. You've arrived to the Lansing area and we're happy you're here. We wanted to have kind of a pure relationship with passengers, that sense that I'm a passenger too, that, you're a passenger, I'm a passenger. Your concerns, I've had them. Your worries, I've had them. And we wanted to have that with the passengers. They felt like they could come up to us at the station and just say, I'm just not sure, how this works. I don't know how to find a seat when we get on the train. I don't know when I'm supposed to bring my ticket out. And that was, again, we just wanted that pure relationship that we felt approachable. One of the major implications of this program that I think has come after we started it, that we didn't even set out to affect, is a reduction in dwell times. And there's a lot of implications throughout the system. And I'll talk more about that later in the presentation. But this is a $0 reduction in dwell time. And if you know anything about infrastructure and railroad, to cut 5 minutes off a schedule can be a multi-million-dollar investment project in infrastructure, and volunteers are virtually free. And then having some kind of presence in an understaffed or unstaffed station. Something I want to make sure is clear: we did not come in to replace the station agent. The station agent had been out of the station for almost 2 years. So I just want to make it clear, I don't see us competing with station agents in any way. But if there's a station that's been on staff for a long period of time, like East Lansing's, then a program like what we started was able to fill that gap, and it was certainly necessary there. So just to give you an idea of kind of the case study, how we started the program in East Lansing, because I think you'll find it, something that we can replicate. That initial planning meeting I talked about, a ton of partners in the room. RPA really spearheaded this, so I want to give them credit as well for that. And just, again, getting all these partners into the same room was just amazing. And all of them saying, we want to make this work. What can we do to serve you? And that long-term relationship has been built to where any one of my volunteers can raise an issue. They're on the ground, they're seeing what the customers are experiencing, they bring something to me, and I'm able to send an email to CATA, MDOT, and Amtrak, get a response within a few hours, and we're able to start working on fixing the issue. And I think that's really valuable for the customers that ride the train. We then launched a recruitment event. A simple press release. The news really jumped on it, and they were coming to us and saying they actually figured they would get a lot of traction, because they said anytime they've done stories on trains, they get a lot of people. So I don't know, all of you train people out there are the news's friend on this. So they publicized it. They were live. We had some interviews. We got about 30 people to sign up. Then Amtrak staff and Amtrak police provided an official training for us for our 15 volunteers that really wanted to go through with it. We ran background checks for all of them, and the staff and police did a fantastic job training the volunteers, giving them an idea of just the very simple tasks that they were going to be asked to do, what to do in the case of an emergency, these kind of things that were really important. And then we began scheduling shifts. The beauty of being in 2020 is this is a much less arduous task for myself to complete. We have a Google Sheet, which is like an Excel, but accessible to everyone at the same time. And we simply keep a running schedule of each month, and folks are able to just go on and pick a time or times that they want to sign up to be a volunteer. And what we did at first is we had myself and Steve sort of as the managers signed up for most shifts, and then other folks could sign up with us, shadow us for 1 or 2 times until they felt comfortable doing it by themselves. And that's kind of how we bring in and intake new volunteers if we get them, is to place them with someone who knows what they're doing. And after a couple times, they realize it's simple. They are able to do it on their own, and they get that confidence, which is really great. And the other important pillar for starting was facilitating ongoing training. Of course, COVID's thrown a little bit of a wrench in this, but we had our first one over the holidays. We had a catered meal that Amtrak provided, and we did some training, again, just protocol training. We had been able to start communicating with the conductors on the train, and so we wanted to tell our volunteers how that was going to work. And the conductors have been able to let us know train makeups, if they've got handicapped guests, all those kind of things as well. Next slide, please. So we wanted this community investment. I talked about that already, but having the community take ownership of the station. It's not just Amtrak station that they plopped in East Lansing. It's really East Lansing's station that the city, the region takes ownership of it. And so having creative and passionate people from the community, that really makes a big difference. So a couple of examples, we've got a pair of sisters who are volunteers. They're retired, very invested in the community. They're very fun. And they, on their own, decided to do all the legwork in a St. Patrick's Day and a Valentine's Day outreach. So they had a prize wheel with prizes. They had, decorated the station, just something like that really gives the guests a flair of locality, which I think is really important. And things we've planned, again, COVID's thrown a wrench, but we want to bring live music from the college during the holidays into the station. There's tons of ensembles at Michigan State. And we're working with the Arts Council right now on some station beatification and getting some art in the station on the windows. If you could go ahead and go to the next slide for me.
We have about 6 minutes before we turn into pumpkins here, so I do want to get some questions. So
yep. So I already mentioned peer relationships with passengers, so I won't belabor that. If you can go to the next slide. Reducing dwell times, this is the point I really wanted to highlight with a program like this. As an example, on Thanksgiving Day, which would be the busiest day in East Lansing, we have about 300 passengers that wanted to board. And because the volunteers had them queued up in the way that the conductors wanted, they boarded the 300 passengers in 5 minutes through about 4 doors, and the train was out of the station on time. Typically, the train is able to come in, get loaded, and it's able to sit there for 4 or 5 minutes. So a schedule adjustment could probably be made if this is something that's consistent. So again, a 7-hour trip could be cut by something like 30 minutes if you could reduce the dwell time, even just 3 minutes at the stations along the route. A 30-minute cut for $0, I don't even want to think about what a 30-minute cut would look like in infrastructure costs. So this has big implications, much more than just having a volunteer there, is being able to cut dwell times to shave schedules down. I think the key to the whole program is having somebody to run it. I mean, you've got to have somebody who's in charge of it. And the volunteers, at least in East Lansing's case, they came from the community. The community wanted to invest. So next slide. I don't think there's anything else. Nope, I already mentioned that, so we can go to questions, Ray. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Josh. I appreciate that. I especially appreciate the bullet point about the dwell time. That's certainly very important in the industry, and as you pointed out, it takes millions of dollars to gain a couple of minutes in runtime, and so that's really a tremendous benefit of this that I hadn't thought of. We have, I think, 14 or 15 questions here, and I'm all right for Josh. Is the Lansing Station Host program based upon the Olympia Lacey, Washington program started in 1993 after a 6-year fundraising and lobbying effort by citizens of Thurston County?
So the Station Volunteer Program is not out of nowhere. There are a number of programs around the nation that Amtrak and other places have featured. That would be one of the ones that we looked into. So it's not out of nowhere. I think the one that makes our program unique is having the partnership with MDOT and Amtrak specifically and RPA. So I think the programs that already exist are fantastic, and we're just another piece in that puzzle.
Great, thanks. I think